All right, guys, welcome back to ABL Sports. Today we are starting a series where we recap all 32 NFL team seasons with a fan from this team. Today we're joined by Kushal.
What's going on, guys?
And
Longtime Ravens fan here, Kushal.
yeah,
Good to be on here.
yeah, no, we're gonna be recapping the Baltimore Ravens season today. So one of like the more disappointing seasons they've had in the past couple years, when 8-9 felt like they couldn't beat a good team and like felt like they couldn't get healthy either. So preseason expectations. It feels like in the AFC now, it kind of reminds me of 15, 20 years ago, where back in the AFC, the 3 to 4 teams you always knew that would be good and in the hunt were the Patriots, whatever team Peyton Manning was on, the Ravens, and the Steelers with Big Ben. And now the three teams that you kind of know are going to be in the hunt are the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Ravens. And the Bengals if, Burrow can stay healthy. But this year was very different. This year, we're not going to talk about the Chiefs and the Bills in this video, but the Ravens, they went 8-9, and it felt like they got off to a really hard 1-5 start, and just couldn't get on the right side of the injury bug. So, what were your kind of expectations of the Ravens going into this season?
Yeah, man, when we're thinking about August and early September, this was supposed to be the team. Everybody, pundits, fans, coaches, players, were all saying this is the best roster in the NFL. This is supposed to be the best iteration of the Baltimore Ravens that we've seen in a long time. And, we have Lamar Jackson, who came off of a career year. Personally, of course, as a fan, I think he should have been MVP. Regardless, he's coming off his career best year. There was something different about this team. And so, really, we expected the world. There was nothing short of a Super Bowl win in our sights. And obviously, didn't happen that way. But yeah, preseason, very optimistic outlook from this team.
Yeah, I mean, so my personal preseason predictions, and you guys will probably hear this throughout all the videos. My Super Bowl matchup was the Chiefs versus the Rams. Because my philosophy, even though I am a Chiefs fan, I was like, and it's similar to the Patriots, I'm not gonna pick against the Chiefs until someone beats them in the playoffs. I mean, it's still technically no one besides Brady and Burrow have, but next year maybe the predictions will change. And I feel like the Rams were the obvious pick in the NFC. I was obviously wrong, but yeah, in the AFC, I had the Ravens making the AFC Championship because the Bills were just kind of a mess this year, and I really liked. I'm gonna be honest, I liked the roster. I obviously Harbaugh. I thought Todd Monken would be good. And I thought, we'd get another great year out of Lamar, which I don't know how many there are, but we're going to talk about that later in the video. But this roster was good, and this was kind of like one of the last years of your roster where you're not going to be paying many people. Kyle Hamilton still on his rookie deal, Linderbaum, a couple other good guys, Zay Flowers, and also you drafted Malachi Starks, who was my favorite player in the draft. I didn't think he was the best. I had him actually top five rated, but I thought he was a phenomenal player.
Yeah. Yeah, I was again very hyped with the Malachi Starks pick. Baltimore's always had this philosophy of best player available. It's what happened. We were picking at pick 14, got Kyle Hamilton when safety wasn't the most pressing concern, but you see Malachi Starks there, and
Yeah.
that's a defensive talent that you just can't pass up on, especially because that fills the void of Baltimore Ravens part ways with Geno Stone, who left in free agency to the Bengals, and then also they released Marcus Williams as well after his long-term deal didn't work out. So Starks was looking good, and that also wants to it makes me want to bring up Zach Orr as one of the discussion points as defensive coordinator because when you compare Zach Orr to Mike McDonald, their first years in Baltimore were pretty similar. The defense, weeks 1 through 8, was not good.
Mhm.
There's no sugarcoating that they were not a good defense, but they go into the bye, they sort of reevaluate, and you come out and start playing November, December football, and it was one of the best units in the league. Then year two, Mike McDonald takes off. That was probably the best Ravens defense I've watched in my lifetime. Obviously, I wasn't around for the 2000s Ravens defense. So again, preseason with the addition of Malachi Starks, Kyle Hamilton still being on his rookie deal, and just this roster that was built around there. Jair Alexander also was an addition at one point. I really thought Zach Orr was going to be able to elevate this same team and get them to that point where you start being able to go toe to toe with teams such as the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, phenomenal guy, and you can never count him out. Same thing with Josh Allen, star power, can never seem to count him out as well. So I really thought that, yes, with those additions, this was going to be a great turnaround, particularly for the defense this year.
Yeah, so I going, so I want to kind of talk about the middle of the Ravens season. So as I said, a couple minutes ago, they started the season 1-5, and they're in the bye week. And I remember during that time of the year, their bye week, October 19th, I was looking at their schedule, and coming up, they had the Bears, who at the time were not a very good team, the Dolphins, the Vikings, the Browns, the Jets, the Bengals, the Steelers, then the Bengals again. And I was like, they're gonna go on a pretty good win streak. I was like, this is a very manageable schedule, and they started 1-5, and this is when the Steelers kind of started to implode a bit. And I was like, oh my, the Ravens are gonna run away with the North. It's so, I mean, they're gonna do this again, and then they get a 5-game win streak, and then they go into Thanksgiving night, lose to the Bengals at home. I mean, really kind of got manhandled by them that game. Just couldn't stop Burrow, and it was Burrow's first game back too.
Yeah.
And then they lost to the Steelers again. And then they lost to the Steelers the first time. I know there were some questionable calls that game, but it was still like but I was still like, okay, the Ravens are still gonna win. They play the Steelers again. They have a manageable schedule, and then they just kind of and then they win two of their last or sorry, they win two of their last 4 games. But I mean, two of them, one was against the Bengals and one was against the injured Green Bay Packers. It's so I I just felt like the Ravens couldn't beat a good team this year. And yes, I know they were injured, but for example, Lamar Jackson, even when he was in it, just felt like he wasn't the same guy.
Yeah, Lamar's confidence seemed shot for a little while. And not to go back to the start of the season, but I really think that first game in Buffalo, a 1 point loss, Derrick Henry fumble in the most clutch time of the game. And that really set the tone for how the rest of the year was going to go. And when Baltimore needs to get going and they need that little kick, I just don't feel like they had it. And part of that, you can look at the players and say they were dejected, but part of it also points at Harbaugh. And Harbaugh was, of course, a very big discussion point as we got to this middle and end point.
Well,
You
let's
win
just get into
five.
Harbaugh's firing too.
Mhm. Yeah, he starts winning 5 games in a row, and we start to see, okay, this is a team that's refound their energy, their passion, they're ready to go. But then they grow complacent, and that has been the biggest issue. Go all the way back to 2021. 2021, Lamar goes down right around this same point in 2021. Their roster at that time, they had a run game of Devontae Freeman, Latavius Murray, Le'Veon Bell. Those are not guys that are going to get it done. You talk about Harbaugh being one of the greatest coaches that Baltimore has ever had, but part of being a great coach is being able to understand how you're going to adapt and improvise. And so the same way the Ravens finished 8-9 in 2021, and that was a very lackluster season, we kind of saw a resurgence of the same thing where Lamar went down for a little bit, he was injured. And when you start looking at backups on the roster, same thing. We had Kyle Hamilton battling a couple of injuries. Marlon Humphrey missed 2 or 3 games due to injury. Roquan Smith missed one due to injury. You as a coach need to be able to put your team in the right position to succeed, whether that is changing the scheme or adapting, or maybe it's just coaching your players up better. We didn't see that. We saw Harbaugh try and fit the square peg through the circle hole, you know, 6 more times towards the end of the season, and it just didn't work. It really was not any sort of innovative offense. We didn't see any innovative defense. They grew complacent. They started winning games, and that Thanksgiving game was kind of a wake-up call for them of, hey, we need to figure things out. They hung in there with Pittsburgh, but again, the issue with Pittsburgh was it never should have been that close of a game anyway.
Yeah.
On a fourth down controversial call, we're ignoring that there were 3 other goal line chances where they didn't score. They did not come away with anything. And you really need to evaluate over the course of the entire game, 60 minutes. There are little times here and there, and they add up over the course of the game. And I think that was such a killer thing for the Ravens this year.
Yeah, so I know you kind of briefly touched on Harbaugh. What were your thoughts when he got fired? And when he got fired, who did you want to replace him? Because in my mind, I thought Jesse Minter would be the best fit for the Ravens, which I'll get into in a minute. But I just want to know your immediate reaction and how you felt and who you wanted to replace him.
Oh yeah, Harbaugh getting fired. I think the writing was on the wall that it was going to happen sooner or later. Um, and again, I don't want to keep harping on that 2021 season, but we look at 2021. Really, you can go as far back as 2016. 2016, the Ravens started kind of falling off. They were 3, 4 years removed after a Super Bowl, and they didn't have the same defense. They didn't have Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs, Haloti Ngata. Um, and they're going downhill. And I think Harbaugh was on his way out in 2018. I remember when we
Yeah, he
drafted
was.
him.
So,
Yeah.
fun fact, USC was it like USC almost fired Clay Helton in 2018. Harbaugh was going to go to USC and
Yeah.
coach college. That was the original plan. Like
Right.
USC was going to hire Harbaugh. Like so USC in 2018, I remember reading the reports. Sorry to interrupt you, but um, they were going to fire Clay Helton if John Harbaugh would have agreed to go to USC because he had connections to USC in some way. He would have brought his staff. But yeah,
Right.
no, 2018. I was going to touch on that funny enough, like in my kind of like thing. But yeah, no, he was on his way out in 2018, and like I'm gonna be honest, I feel like the Lamar Jackson pick, like him in those last 6 games,
Yeah.
kind of saved him at that time. And I feel like in 2018 it would have been more mutual because
Yeah.
it felt like it was more the Ravens firing him. But yeah, going
Right.
back to your thing about, how you felt about Harbaugh getting fired and who you wanted to
Yeah.
replace him.
Yeah, so that's things we talked about 2016, 2018, and then getting up to this point, the last thing was actually in 2023. And I wrote sports articles for my high school paper, and I wrote in 2023, after the loss to the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, I said, this is the time for a changing of the guard. John Harbaugh, end on a good note, leave with your head high, and don't let Mike McDonald leave the building. I thought that was going to be our guy. So
I
in that sense, obviously it didn't happen. And then we jump forward another 2 years. Now we're here, end of the 2020-25 season. And my guy, again, I really wanted Clint Kubiak because I was such a big believer of that Mike McDonald mentality. I thought Kubiak was going to be this next up and coming guy. I wanted somebody who was going to be creative and offensive minded. But with that being said, I was very, very happy at the hiring of Jesse Minter. It felt right. This is a guy who's been on the coaching staff. He worked with the defensive backs when we had Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters. When both of those two led as the number one and I believe number three um, takeaways leader in both fumbles recovered and interceptions. So Minter's proven he knows Baltimore, he knows this system, but he's also young and he's innovative. So I'm very excited for what Minter has to offer, and also the fact that he's going to be a defensive play caller. I would have liked to have seen some more investment on the offensive side, but then again, the Ravens go ahead and they hire Declan Doyle as
It was
OC.
Ben Johnson's right hand man. Like
Yeah,
Ben Johnson loves that guy, and like funny enough, like it's like I think of this like for example, when Kevin O'Connell got hired by the Vikings, Sean McVay, he was happy for him, but he loved Kevin O'Connell. Look how
yeah,
good Kevin O'Connell is now. Ben Johnson devastated with him leaving, but that's a good sign for the Ravens, and because like I'm gonna be honest, he wouldn't have gotten a shot to call plays in Chicago, which I don't blame him. That's why
yeah.
Bieniemy left KC a couple years ago to go to Washington, but. Yeah, I felt like, when the Ravens hired Harbaugh, I originally was shocked and I was kind of a little like ticked. I was like, why the hell would they do that? Like,
Right.
because in my eye, because here's the thing, going back to 2023, but then I thought in 2023, he had the best staff in the NFL at the time. He had Todd Monken and Mike McDonald. And before that, he had Jesse Minter too. And I heard Jesse Minter runs a very similar scheme to Mike McDonald.
Yeah.
So I heard they're basically virtually the same coach, which would be very good for the Ravens.
Very great. Yeah.
And I remember the Seahawks hired Mike McDonald, and I was like, that is a very good hire. I didn't think it'd be this good, but very, very good hire. I was high on the Seahawks this year, picked them to win their division at the beginning of the year. But I just, you know, Jesse Minter, I like the hire because it kind of keeps that Ravens toughness culture in a way. And most of the players they've already played in that defensive scheme. And I like his offensive hire. And like I said, since Jesse Minter's calling the defensive plays, you don't need a crazy good defensive coordinator. Like it's just someone who can install a scheme and just be a good leader. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Like when you're kind of on that side of the ball. But I was just a little concerned for the Ravens at first because all of a sudden Harbaugh takes the Giants job like an hour later, and everyone's like, and then I'm looking at the Giants like, wow, this is a good thing. I was like, oh, they have a chance to get Anthony Weaver. They have a, and this was before Todd Monken got hired by the Browns, but they're like, oh, they could hire Todd Monken. And then, once all the dust settled, I was like, well, you know what? I think this kind of Harbaugh Ravens splitting up is going to work out for both sides. I think he's going to lead the Giants to a playoff berth next year, and I think the Ravens will be much better next year. But speaking of next year, I want to transition to a very I don't want to call it controversial, but it was a very interesting topic. Lamar Jackson. So there's been ideas floated around about Lamar Jackson. I don't think it'll ever happen, but Lamar Jackson getting traded to the Raiders for the first overall pick. I'm going to be completely honest. I think Lamar Jackson has 2 years left of being a top five NFL quarterback. I know that's a very hot take and maybe a polarizing take, but I've seen the regression. After 2020, I mean, last year he had a great year, but the drop off, he doesn't want to run anymore. It looks like he's scared to get hit. He's just very skittish, kind of in the pocket, and he just doesn't like to leave it. And I'm going to be honest, in Lamar Jackson's game, he needs to leave the pocket. That's how he's a threat. That's why he's being paid $60 million. And we saw this year, if you are not pay, if as a quarterback, if you are not playing up to the level you are being paid as, your team will not be good. I mean, look at the Seahawks. Sam Darnold outplayed that $33 million he was getting there in the Super Bowl. Drake May outplaying the. I know he's on a rookie contract, but he's giving the Patriots $50 million value, and he's making like five. So that's why they're that good. So I just want to get your thoughts on Lamar Jackson, and if I know next year he'll obviously be the Ravens quarterback, but just thoughts on maybe letting him go, maybe a year too early instead of a year too late.
Yeah, when I look at the Lamar Jackson situation, you bring up a lot of good points. First of all, I definitely agree. I think he has 2 more years of being a top five quarterback. When I kind of, and I wrote down some notes here, and I was just thinking, Lamar has regressed a lot. Lamar in 2019, 2020 was electric as a runner. Even in Louisville, before he got to the NFL, Lamar was a insane runner, and that's why many people thought of him as a wide receiver prospect or a running back prospect. You don't see him doing that kind of stuff anymore. And while I do believe he is a good passer, he has the highest passer rating in NFL history as a quarterback. But that being said, when you're in a scheme that only calls for you to throw the ball maybe 20, 23, 24 times a game, I don't think Lamar is getting that done with just his arm. I think he needs to run, and he's not playing at that. You look at the four quarterbacks that were in their respective championship games. You have Bo Nix, rookie contract, Drake May, rookie contract, Sam Darnold, who's far, like you said, far outplaying that $30 million contract, and Matthew Stafford, who I believe he's sitting somewhere at 45 mil.
But he's
But again,
outplaying that. He's playing like 60 million.
absolutely. Matthew Stafford is a MVP frontrunner this year. Say what you will about if he deserves it or not, but he produces. He's getting it done, and he's getting it done in his mid 30s. Lamar is falling below that line that we've drawn, and Lamar Jackson is 28, 29 years old. So I definitely think that Lamar Jackson, it needs to be considered about the same changing of the guard. When do you decide to move on from him? But that being said, I don't believe that trading Lamar or cutting him is the way to go. I would like to see sort of the Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers treatment where you have a quarterback who's still balling, who's still very serviceable and playing at a high level, but you go ahead and you grab a guy mid to late first rounds, which is where unless Baltimore wins the Super Bowl, it's where Baltimore's going to be picking at for the next couple of years as well. I think you grab a quarterback prospect, say in 2030, you have Lamar extended for maybe a 3 year deal once his contract expires in 2027. And then it plays out till there. You get a guy in 2030, Lamar has 1 more year. You have your rookie quarterback sit for maybe a year, year and a half, and then it's time to switch. You let Lamar go in free agency and you say, thank you for your wonderful years with Baltimore, but we believe we have our guy who's next up. And I'm sure there will be plenty of teams. Like there's the mock trades to Las Vegas. Of course, they know Fernando Mendoza is their guy. That's who they want to get. But I'm sure even in 2030, when Lamar Jackson is, I think it'll be 33, 34, I still think at that time he's going to be a very serviceable quarterback. He'll have his pick of where he'd like to go among the QB needy teams. But I definitely agree with your take that Baltimore is going to look to solve that position through the draft in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, so my take is assuming assuming Lamar has a similar year to last year, next year, and like not this year, you could get a top five pick for Lamar. You could probably get two of them. You could probably get two first rounders for Lamar. If next year, I want it's the quarterback draft class. There's this kid transferred from TSU to Indiana. His name is Josh Huber. Everyone's going to know his name by October of next year. Julian Sain from Ohio State. Arch Manning, who he is progressing very fast. The second half of this college football season, he was excellent. Jordan Mailata from USC. If DJ Lagway can get it right at Baylor, he's a guy. I Sam Levitt at LSU. Those are just six guys who have a good chance of being a first rounder. Next year's quarterback draft is going to be very good. And let's say, there's three, it's similar to 2024 where there's three guys that can go top three. Let's say the Jets are at the number two pick. Ravens call them up, give you Lamar for your pick.
I think if I'm New York, I take that in a heartbeat, but I don't believe that Baltimore is going to make that offer.
I'm
I
just
think
saying that's what I would do if I were the Ravens GM. Because I
Mhm.
mean, you kind of reset it, you get a rookie, or either you're gonna have to eat some of Lamar's money, but you get a rookie quarterback contract. That way you can re-sign guys like we said, Kyle Hamilton when he starts making money. I don't know if you're gonna want to sign Zay Flowers because he's probably gonna want more than he's valued at. Linderbaum, kind of replenish that offensive line. All of a sudden, it's like the Patriots. They're gonna be able to get so many guys. If the Patriots wanted to, even the Bears too. We'll just talk about the Bears because that video is going to be coming out in a couple days. Uh, the Bears, they could trade, and we proposed that idea in the video as well. They could trade for Max Crosby because Caleb Williams is on a rookie contract, and they could pay Max Crosby $30-40 million a year. So that's where with the Ravens, let's say Lamar has a good year but chokes in the playoffs again. Maybe it's time you make a trade and you draft an Arch Manning.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's time, it's time is something that we can't really say. I think Lamar's just been that guy. And I think the NFL's valuation of quarterbacks, I think it's kind of a little high right now. But when I think about it from a realistic standpoint of, you know, where does the front office value Lamar Jackson? I just don't see them moving on. I think a big part of why Harbaugh was fired was for them to appease Lamar. There's, the rumors that were circulating saying that Lamar is at odds with Harbaugh, and he basically gave them an ultimatum saying it's me or him.
Yeah,
Whether
I
you
heard that too.
and I don't think it's as extreme as the reports say, but I definitely do believe that there's some truth in those rumors. And so when you take a look at that, I think the front office is showing that Lamar's their guy at least for the next 2, 3 years. Typically, when a new head coach is hired, if they are not signed to an extension, they're fired. And they're fired within 2 years of their contract. So Minter inked, I believe, a 5-year deal as the Baltimore Ravens head coach. I believe he's going
And
to
they're
make it.
patient. They'll give him at least three.
Absolutely. So I think Lamar makes it through the timeline that I was giving of 2029, 2020, 2030. That's kind of when we're looking at he's probably going to be heading out the door right around that time. Because also that's when we start to reach the end of players like Kyle Hamilton's prime. Tyler Linderbaum is a center, so obviously he has a little bit more career longevity, but that's another guy who I think we're going to be looking at towards the end of his tenure with the Ravens. Zay Flowers as well. You don't typically see receivers producing the same kind of numbers when you're 28, 29, unless, of course, you're Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, kind of a guy like that. And then same thing, I think Roquan Smith. Roquan Smith is going to be at a crossroads by 2029, 3 years from now, where Roquan Smith is going to have a sort of Bobby Wagner-esque choice where he's going to say, I want a Super Bowl ring. I've spent my years with the Bears, where obviously he was in a very dysfunctional organization at that time, came to Baltimore thinking he could get it done and can't. And I think once Roquan Smith's time is gone, he'll be out. So I think Lamar will be the last of this core to leave. I think the rest of the guys are going to be on their way out around 2028, 2029. Lamar sticks it through 29 to 2030. And right around then, that's when we start to see him go. I personally believe the front office values Lamar too much. And you also have to think about the emotional attachment. I think they're emotionally attached to Lamar
Oh yeah, I
Jackson.
think there's three untradeable players in this league because of how attached the city is to them. I think Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Every other player in this league as of right now is tradable, but those three guys, I mean, Baltimore loves him. I
Yeah.
mean, he is like the most popular player there since like Ray Lewis. So just kind of this last thing, any kind of additions you want the Ravens to make at this offseason, any position group you think needs upgraded?
Yeah, so position groups I think that need to be upgraded. I'd like to see Baltimore grab another receiver. I've seen a lot of mock drafts having us taking Malachi Lemon, wide receiver out of USC. Absolutely love what I see out of him as well. A little bit of a shorter, shiftier kind of guy. Reminds me a lot of Zay Flowers' Senior Bowl tape. And I really think that adding Malachi Lemon would be a phenomenal piece to the Ravens offense, especially if we see the departure of Isaiah Likely. But I think if Isaiah Likely stays, I would like to see the Ravens heavily invest that first round pick in an offensive tackle or either offensive tackle or offensive guard because we have our tackles currently with Ronnie Stanley, who's been plagued by injuries ever since 2020, that Raiders game. And then we have on the other side, Roger Rosengarten. Roger Rosengarten, love him out of Washington. He's in his second year. He's going to take time to develop. So I think he'll be okay. What I want to see, though, is somebody who's kind of that tackle guard flex spot who can either blossom into a replacement for Ronnie Stanley at left tackle in the next year or two, or one of your plug and play guys who's going to replace number 77, Daniel Falele, who there's been a lot of media attention about. I just don't think he's that guy. Same thing with another USC O lineman that the Ravens have is Andrew Voorhees. I don't think that he's a solution either. So I really want to see offensive line as that first round pick. It's been a really long time since Baltimore's invested in first round. They did it with Tyler Linderbaum. It worked. But their philosophy has always been grab a second round, third round guy, develop it. I want to see that first round Joe Alt, Tyler Linderbaum, Creed Humphrey, that kind of pick where they know they're going to get a dog in that position.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for analysis on that. Yeah, and then also going back to the offensive line, I think Andrew Voorhees, the guard out of USC, he can play tackle as well. He's been a great pickup for the Ravens. He was supposed to be a second rounder towards ACL. Ravens grab him in the fifth, and he's been great for them. Uh, Thank you, Kushal, for coming on to ABL. We really appreciate it. Starting us out with this great Ravens recap. I wish the Ravens best of luck this offseason. I have a feeling they're going to be back in the playoffs next year.
Of course. Thank you very much for having me. It was a great time. And good luck to your Chiefs. I hope your championship prediction comes true, but I'll be rooting the other way around just now.
All right,
Thanks again.
appreciate it.